The Greek Phalanx was one of the most iconic and influential military formations of the ancient world, a formation that embodied not only tactical efficiency, but also the social and political values of the polis that employed it. Its structure was built on the principle of close order combat, where heavily armed infantrymen, known as hoplites, fought shoulder to shoulder, forming a compact mass whose strength derived from strict discipline and collective coordination rather than individual feats of heroism. This tight formation was not simply a method of warfare, but a physical expression of the Greek ideal that the community stood stronger than any single warrior, an idea reflected in every aspect of hoplite equipment and battlefield behavior. Each hoplite carried the large round shield called the aspis, crafted of layered wood and faced with bronze, an object that was both a defensive tool and a deeply symbolic artifact. Weighing between 6 and 8 kilograms, the shield demanded considerable physical endurance, especially during long marches or extended clashes, when the shield arm had to remain raised despite fatigue and pressure from enemy blows. Its design was essential because it protected not only the bearer, but also the left side of the man standing next to him, creating a continuous defensive barrier that symbolized the interdependence of citizen soldiers. The aspis thus became a visible representation of trust. Abandoning one's shield in battle was considered a disgrace, not because it left the individual vulnerable, but because it endangered the entire phalanx. Hoplites were armed with the dory, a spear measuring around 2 to 3 meters, designed for both overhand and underhand thrusting, depending on local traditions and the tactical needs of the moment. In addition to the primary spear, many hoplites carried a short sword, the xiphos, or the curved kopis, which served as a secondary weapon once spears broke or fighting grew too close for normal thrusts. Protective equipment included bronze helmets, often ornate with cheek guards, crests, and nose-pieces, breastplates made of bronze or layered linen, linothorax, greaves for the shins, and occasionally additional arm or thigh guards, depending on wealth and regional styles. The combination of armor and close formation made the front ranks extremely resilient, and the projecting forest of spear points presented a formidable obstacle for enemy forces attempting a frontal assault. The psychological effect of facing such a wall should not be underestimated. Ancient sources emphasize that the sight of a disciplined phalanx advancing in silence or in rhythmic step could break the morale of less organized troops before physical contact even occurred. The phalanx was usually arranged 8 to 12 ranks deep, though this depth could vary significantly depending on tactical considerations, terrain, or the preferences of individual commanders. Some city-states, like Sparta, favored deeper formations for stability and pushing power, believing that the collective weight of the ranks behind the front line played a decisive role in the othismos, the intense pushing phase that followed the initial clash. Others preferred wider lines to prevent encirclement, especially when facing opponents known for cavalry or skirmishers. The most extreme example of depth occurred at the Battle of Leuctra in 381 BC, where the Theban commander Epaminondas concentrated his elite sacred band and supporting troops in a massive 50-rank-deep block on the left wing, using this overwhelming concentration of force to smash the Spartan right, the most prestigious position in their army, and overturn centuries of Spartan dominance. The success of this tactic demonstrated that the phalanx, though inherently rigid, could be used creatively through intelligent manipulation of mass and momentum. When the phalanx advanced, it did so at a measured and carefully coordinated pace. Discipline was essential, for a single soldier stepping out of rhythm could create gaps that rippled down the line.
Spartan armies, renowned for their training, sometimes used flute music to regulate their advance, allowing even large formations to maintain cohesion. The moment of collision between two opposing phalanxes marked the beginning of the othismus, literally the push, during which the front ranks locked shields and pressed forward, relying on the powerful momentum generated by the men behind them. Casualties were often less important than the psychological and physical endurance required to maintain formation under immense pressure, as well as the ability to exploit even minor weaknesses in the enemy's line. Once one side began to waver or a gap opened, collapse could be rapid and catastrophic. Because of its dense and tightly ordered structure, the phalanx functioned best on level, open terrain, where soldiers could maintain alignment without obstacles disrupting their ranks. Rugged ground, steep slopes, woodland, or riverbanks created dangerous gaps and exposed the formation's inherent vulnerabilities. The flanks posed one of the phalanx's greatest weaknesses, since the protective wall of overlapping shields existed only at the front and partially along the left side. So commanders made great efforts to extend their line or anchor the flanks on terrain features such as hills, cliffs, or marshes. However, attempting to match the enemy's width often stretched formations dangerously thin, making them more susceptible to breakthrough. The right wing was considered the most prestigious and dangerous position because of the natural tendency of soldiers to drift rightward for greater protection. Thus, the best and most reliable troops, such as seasoned Spartan veterans, were placed on this wing to ensure stability. Light infantry, archers, slingers, and cavalry existed in Greek armies, but generally played modest roles, especially in earlier periods when Greek warfare emphasized decisive frontal clashes. Despite its strengths, the phalanx had significant tactical limitations. Its rigidity made quick changes of direction difficult, and retreating was extremely hazardous because turning exposed the unshielded right side of each hoplite to enemy attack. The formation was poorly suited to fighting against highly mobile enemies or missile troops capable of harassing the slow-moving mass from afar. Persian armies, with their combination of cavalry and archers, demonstrated these weaknesses during the Greco-Persian Wars, though Greek hoplites often compensated with their superior discipline and heavier armor in close combat. Some polis, notably Sparta, developed more sophisticated drill techniques that allowed for controlled wheeling movements, column-to-line transitions, and even limited forms of oblique advance. Still, these maneuvers remained modest in comparison to the flexibility of later Hellenistic armies and required rigorous training not available to most citizen militias. The Macedonian phalanx under Philip II and Alexander the Great represented a major evolution of the classical model. Philip's reforms replaced the shorter dory with the much longer sarissa, a pike that could reach over 5 meters in length. This created multiple projecting ranks of spear points, dramatically increasing the phalanx's offensive reach, but requiring lighter armor for mobility and 2 hands to manage the lengthy spear, making the aspis impracticable. Instead, Macedonian infantry used a smaller shield strapped to the forearm. The Macedonian phalanx did not operate in isolation. It was integrated into a combined arms system featuring elite cavalry such as the companion cavalry, agile peltasts, archers, and specialized troops. This multi-role army demonstrated both the strength and the limitations of the classical hoplite phalanx, which, though formidable in direct clashes, lacked adaptability on varied terrain and against diverse threats. Yet, despite the eventual transformations in warfare, the classical Greek phalanx left a lasting legacy as a symbol of collective civic action, disciplined unity, and the martial identity of Greek citizen soldiers. It reflected a world where military participation was both a duty and a privilege, and where the strength of the community was literally embodied in the interlocking shields of its warriors, standing firm together in the face of danger. The phalanx was therefore much more than a battlefield formation. It was a cultural institution that shaped and defined the Greek experience of war, citizenship, and collective responsibility for generations.